Femininity and the divine feminine are concepts that are generally misconstrued in this day and age. I actually happened to sit down with a stranger in Waterstones and just have like a 3 hour conversation about so many different things, and I learned so much that I'm just so excited to share. I found myself walking into Waterstones. Obviously, I love books. Why wouldn't I? I saw this gentleman. So he looked about 25, I'm not gonna lie. He had really long hair. He just looked really peculiar. He had a dressing gown on. He had two big black bags with him, and I just looked at him and he just caught my eye, and I thought, wow, what a peculiar character. And then he kind of disappeared, and then I was looking for some books, just browsing around as you do in my favorite section. And then I see him come again with the lady who works there, and she was putting some books away for him. He ended up picking this book, Conversations with God. And I couldn't stop myself. I just had to say something. And I said, that's a really good book. I'm actually reading the third one right now. Happens to be in my bag. What a coincidence. And then, we kind of got into a little small conversation about it. And he told me how it was one of the first books he read when he had his spiritual awakening. And then that was the end of the conversation. He went about his way, and then I went about my way. I decided to sit down and read some of the books that I'd picked up. And then, lo and behold, you see him come, and, he's just like, oh, what are you reading? So we got into a little discussion about what I was reading. Then eventually I just asked him to sit down because I just knew that this man was incredibly interesting. I could just sense it. And especially someone who's been through a spiritual awakening. I just love meeting like-minded people who you can have that sort of conversations with. And I hadn't had that in a while, so I thought, why not just sit down with a stranger who's in a dressing gown? I'm not gonna lie. Okay, things came up for me. I did find myself thinking, whoa, is this like social suicide? Okay, not social suicide, but I'm sitting with someone who looks the way that he looks. And is this kind of embarrassing for me? What will people think of me? And as these judgments came up, I thought, whoa, okay, this is very interesting that, you're very concerned about how you're perceived, and this is one of your judgments. And I didn't judge myself for it. I allowed it. I accepted the fact that I had this judgment. But then as I was sitting there, I just thought, there's no way that I am missing out on all that this man has to say just because I don't want to be perceived in a certain way. And then it made me realize, how being shallow like that and worrying about how you're going to be perceived because of who you're with is stopping you from connecting with so many different people. That conversation with that man truly changed my life. The way that I think, the way that I feel, and the way that I understand the feminine. It is so interesting that I even said this to him, that he is teaching me about the feminine. Like, I'm learning about the feminine from a masculine. He brought up so many amazing points to talking about spiritual literature, and it was really interesting because I'd never heard someone kind of, I guess, not not criticize, I'd say critique it. And he was saying in a way that, it's all to do with reaching a goal, and that's very masculine, whereas the feminine isn't to do with that. And he was talking about, concepts such as ego death, and how people want to kill the ego, and mind is the enemy, and kill your thoughts, and be all in your mind and silence, and bypassing how you feel, and the concept of reality is an illusion, which is something that I also believed in, but I think it needed a little bit of brushing up. So if you ever hear me talking about how reality is an illusion, I want you to understand what I mean by illusion is that it is impermanent. When we think of reality, we think of permanence, right? Reality, okay, oh my God, look, this is real, this is not real. What is reality? Reality alludes to a sense of permanence. However, reality is not permanent. In fact, nothing is permanent. Everything is constantly in flow. Seasons are changing, rivers are flowing, times are changing, plants are growing, we're changing. Everything is constantly moving and flowing, through this innate intelligence that exists in everything. Reality is an illusion in that sense. And reality is also an illusion in a sense of what we see is the past right now, because this is already being created by our minds and it's kind of playing out. It's like we wrote the code and now we're experiencing the code whilst we're writing more code, if you can think of it in a computer kind of way. The point that he was trying to make was that it is dangerous to say that reality is an illusion, because then what you do is you kind of don't take it seriously. You don't take your feelings seriously. You don't take the things that you're perceiving seriously. And life can be rendered meaningless very quickly if we go down that route. Living from your heart is something that he really felt deeply had changed and transformed his life, because obviously he was 32 and he genuinely looked about 22. um but he had started his spiritual awakening around the age of 21, so he's been in it for a long time, longer than I have for sure. And the whole being in your heart and living from your heart, and the heart's wisdom, because the heart truly is the brain. I don't believe the brain should be the brain and be given so much priority as it is. It's the heart. The heart has so much wisdom. When you can live from your heart, you're living from the divine feminine. And the divine feminine is all about being. One of the things that he brought up for me was about being on your spiritual journey. So he came to me, right, when he saw me and he asked me what I was reading. I had about 5 books next to me because that's just if you like I said, if you know me, I'm obsessed with books. And he highlighted back or reflected back to me even this urge to constantly want to improve, and how it's not necessarily the healthiest thing. Because yes, self-development is great, okay, we should always be growing and evolving, but to do it for the sake of it, because you feel that there's something wrong with you, maybe that you're broken, like it's a subconscious belief. Like it's not a conscious belief for me, but subconsciously maybe it's, I don't feel like I'm enough right now, and I feel like I have to learn this and learn this and learn this and know this to feel worthy. Because sometimes it's okay to just accept who you are at the moment and appreciate that, rather than thinking, let me just rush to this place. Rather than rushing to get from point A to B of, okay, this is a problem I've highlighted, this is where I'm lacking in one area. Let me quickly try to get to point B so I can be there and feel good about myself. Rather than doing that, how about just accepting where you are, embracing where you are, and being where you are? Just being present. How often are we just seeking? You get onto this stage of spiritual, um you learn about spirituality and you just want to learn it all, and it becomes, okay, now I want to become spiritually enlightened, now I want to learn this, I want to learn this. But what about just stopping and embracing where you are, about celebrating where you are, rather than seeking? I find that personally, when I was in primary school, it was okay. Now I know that I'm going to be in secondary school. I have to get my GCSEs. Then I have to go to sixth form and get my A levels. And I have to go to university. And then I have to go there. And, you're never really content with where you are. You're always looking further ahead of you. And of course, it's good to have dreams and good to kind of, you know, envision and have visions and be a visionary. But what about the present moment? What about just being where you are and being with your feelings and not trying to bypass them and not trying to suppress them or ignore them? To be spiritual doesn't mean to be happy all the time. It doesn't mean to ignore how you feel and beat yourself up for having negative thoughts and not feeling good, because I used to do that, and I'm sure you do that too at times. It's so natural when you get on this journey of self-development. This is why it can be kind of a double-edged sword that I didn't see coming. I just remember leaving this conversation with this individual and feeling incredibly peaceful and incredibly content with where I am and with who I am, rather than feeling, oh, I need to work on this, I need to work on this, quickly do this, do this, do this, do this. This is actually one of the gene keys that came up for me. It's something that drives evolution, okay? Because if we were just really really content and just purely content where we are, we would never aim or strive to have anything different or to grow in a sense. But like I said, it is a double-edged sword. There is so much to say for being in the moment, for being present, for deep acceptance of yourself completely where you are. it, I guess it would have made my journey a little bit more different. I didn't realize how masculine my self development journey had been. I didn't realize how I hadn't incorporated the divine feminine into my life. But like I said, it's so funny that a it's the masculine helping me to incorporate the feminine, because I'm not gonna lie, I'd always met masculines in my life that, you know, I just never thought would be able to teach me these things, because in this kind of realm, I was kind of the more knowledgeable one. So it was always me teaching them. But I love it. I love that the masculine is able to come just as the feminine is able to help the masculine, because for the masculine to kind of develop into its own, he needs to incorporate the feminine, and usually a feminine comes in. So I want to kind of explain the masculine and feminine. They're states of mind. Okay, they're not, it's not a woman or a man, it's a state of mind. It's a different energy. So I always alluded to being a car. The feminine would be the car. So the feminine is everything. The masculine is just the force, it's the energy, it's the fuel pushing it. So we need to have a balance of them both. But obviously, if you're a woman, you have more of a feminine, like your feminine will be running the show more than your masculine. Like that's how it will be balanced out, especially in regards to your body, your hormones and everything like that, you know. It works better for you if you are more in your feminine energy, which is something that I wasn't doing, like I said. And I feel I can speak to, you know, many of you women. We just don't understand what the feminine is. We think the feminine is looking pretty, getting your nails done, having your hair done, speaking in a certain way. Whereas it's wisdom, it's understanding, it's charisma, it's being, it's feeling, it's loving, it's all encompassing, it's everything. Another great point that he made was, you know, about higher thinking and low thinking and things that we label as good or bad or high or low, because labeling and compartmentalization is a very patriarchal thing. It's a very masculine thing to do. He prefers to say deep thinking as opposed to higher thinking, because it's very hierarchical, hierarchical, hierarchical. Why can't I say the word anymore? Hierarchical. Yeah, you'll get it. Hierarchical. Is it not? Because that's what patriarchy is, right? It's men at the top and then it's like women at the bottom. And there are just certain things that you put in front of you. It kind of shows us how, even in self development, patriarchy exists. All in all, to say that it was a deeply interesting conversation with this gentleman that I'm so grateful that I had. I mean, how beautifully synchronistic. And I had to cut this YouTube video short because my hands are freezing. I'm sorry, my hands are literally freezing. I can't. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you'd like to hear more about this story or hear more about the divine feminine, which is just something so interesting and has really changed the way that I've been living ever since I had that conversation with him. My life has kind of transformed ever since that day, with other events also. But yeah, forward to seeing you in the next video. See you.